I think sourcing is one piece. It's a very important piece, especially for your audience, because having data impacts a lot of different components of what procurement is, right? Sourcing is an important one because you're engaging directly with the business and you're engaging directly with suppliers.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Sourcing Hero podcast. I am your host, Catherine, and I am so excited for you guys to hear from our guest today. I've got Stephany Lapierre on the show, and she is the founder of Tealbook, which is a supplier data platform that she's had for about 5 years now. And before that, she worked at a consulting firm for hypergrowth companies, creating strategic sourcing plans and all kinds of incredible procurement solutions. Stephany, I'm so excited to chat with you today. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine, for having me.
So we're recording this the day after the general U.S. elections. And with that in mind, and with all of the craziness of 2020, just seems like every month gets a little nuttier. Pandemic, race relations, a lot of social injustice, just a lot of unrest. How has all of that impacted Tealbook? And certainly, how has it impacted you as a leader of Tealbook?
I think and to your point, I mean, it's been so trying for a lot of people and businesses these past 7-8 months. I think we're on the fortunate side of this, where suddenly our customers who had spent millions of dollars on their procurement technology solutions were kind of left with no real way to be able to respond fast enough to market changes and the needs of the business, because they just didn't have the information that they needed to react fast enough and respond fast enough. And so in the earlier days, I think my team, what they did that was pretty extraordinary, and the way that they executed was that within days, we offered to the entire world an opportunity to provide supplier lists that are enabled through our machines to be able to find similar suppliers and classify suppliers by geography, types of products and services, etc. And so we offered the market supplier list for any organization that were disrupted by COVID. And we got in the first 3 weeks 170 requests that came through from all sorts of organizations that were, looking to ensure business continuity, smaller suppliers that had the capacity, shifting their supply chain to different countries, and a lot of PP related searches, either companies like Brooks Brothers that were looking for raw ingredients to make N95 mask, and quite a few others changed their production, or even simply securing PPEs that met the requirements to ensure that their employees were feeling safe and coming back to work. So, that sort of was a bit of a launch pad for us in entering into a phase of acceleration, because from that, and we got a lot of media attentions. We got picked up in Forbes a couple of times and a lot of different supply chain procurement related publications for the efforts that we did. And we really did it authentically. Like, this happened, and we knew that we had a solution that was really easy for us to be able to provide to procurement and supply chain teams that were truly scrambling. And so since then, we've been through a lot of other events, and Black Lives Matter happened. That touched us personally because we do have African-American employees. And so staying close to them, understanding how do we respond? How do we support them? Me as a CEO and a leader, us as a company, and how do we stand for equality and justice for all? And so we navigated that, I think, fairly well. And then again, offered the market for supplier lists, or even Tealbook. We did a Black version of our interface so that we could allow organizations that want to know their baseline for spend with African American Black owned businesses, and then know the potential spend that they could if they were to source for organizations that were similar to their incumbents, but that were owned and certified by African American owners. And so those types of initiatives, I think, just made our team feel like we could actually do something. And having so much information on every B2B company in the world, we actually had this information readily available and be able to help with authenticity. And then that led obviously to a lot of growth in our pipeline and closing a lot more our deals. And now we're capitalizing on that to be able to invest even more in our data and propel us forward to cement our position in the market. But So definitely, I come from a community of tech entrepreneurs. I do mentor a lot of female tech founders, and I feel every day incredibly blessed because a lot of companies were on the other side of that coin and going through that and the isolation and not be able to be with your people when you're going through hard times. I can't only imagine.
I'm just so impressed and a little stunned at how much good you could do with the solution that was already in place. And it seems like you were poised to be at your best, basically, when the worst happened. And you can be at your best when things are great as well. So what an incredible platform that you have. And congratulations to you in founding the business and figuring out kind of a way to help other businesses when everything was turned upside down. That's so cool.
Well, we think a lot about our core values as an organization and what's our purpose and how can we make a difference? Because at the end of the day, we're growing, we're hiring. What will get people to want to work at Tealbook? And we have this model around proud. Like we want people to be really proud to work here. And, with our data, we help large enterprise save money, right? Millions of dollars. We help them be more efficient in their digital transformation. Like we do a lot of things that our customers can leverage and tangibly call ROI and tangibly communicate to their leadership team. But it's not necessarily what make people come at Tealbook feel like amazing every day, right? So finding ways that we can give back and truly help, in this case, we were able to help a lot of organizations pivot and make sure that they could continue competing in this really uncertain environment, or be able to identify what kind of social impact they had on their suppliers. We further invested in building a way for small and diverse businesses that are not certified in partnership with our customers, who are large Fortune 500 companies who want to lower the bar for small and diverse businesses and be recognized. And what I was really shocked to find out is that 95% of businesses that are small and diverse that meet the requirements are actually not certified. And so you've got these big organizations that want to make an impact by spending more with these small, diverse businesses. And they're such a great, fantastic pool for innovation, but you can only recognize 5% of them that are certified. And the reason is often it's the cost, and it takes a lot of effort to be certified and maintain your status. And the ROI, from what we've heard, is not necessarily showing the upside for the investment. And so when you can offer companies, if you are woman owned or African American owned or veteran owned or gay lesbian owned, like you should be able to be recognized by your customers and be able to contribute to how they're reporting that spend. And so we've built a self-certification process that was approved by the SBA and approved by our customers and would be recognized. And so that any businesses can go through Tealbook and do a 20-minute self-certification process that's validated and recognized. So those are other really powerful things that our team came up in partnership with our customers, and how much more impact can we have. And another one along that line is allowing our customers to invite their main suppliers who may not be certified because they've lost that status as they grow. And you want that, right? You want those small, diverse businesses to be able to get to a point where they don't get certified because they've been so successful, but it's the impact that they can have on their own suppliers. And often a lot of businesses don't go through that process or don't have a supplier diversity program because it's time consuming. It requires a lot of resources and a portal, and it's a big investment. But with our technology now, with having so much data that's self-enriched and self-maintained, including certifications, we're able to do a one-click diversity report. And so our clients can now invite their suppliers to say, hey, you don't have to go through this massive investment to know what's your diversity spend and get recognized by us. So not only they can make a bigger impact in their tier one suppliers, but they can now better understand and drive the commitment of their suppliers to have a bigger impact into their suppliers. And I think those types of initiatives that we didn't come up on our own, like it was really driven by our customers and also our team, just really excited to make a difference. And then it's contributing to our clients, objective as well. So it's sort of all in the last 7-8 months, really tied in really nicely with our strategy to be the most trusted, the most complete, the most insightful supplier data that powers the procurement digital enterprise.
I love that. And it seems like the supplier diversity certification that you guys do through your platform does two things. It attracts more suppliers, right? But then it probably attracts more employees, more people that want to align their values with yours. I mean, if you're heading into a stage of growth and you're heading into hiring more, what an incredible cultural platform to stand on that I can tell you right now, people like me and people that are coming out of education and college and probably some bad experiences elsewhere, they're looking for that. And I love to hear it. And this is also another reason why I wanted to have you on the show. I wanted this message to get out there because I love companies that are trying to do more than run a business.
Yeah. And it's not just for talent, for us, for sure, right? To really know that every single supplier, every single business matters. You should know about 100% of your suppliers, and you should know about all the suppliers that you don't know about, because you can optimize your own supply chain in a way that you can truly drive, not just your bottom line, but you can start driving innovation. If you outsource or if you automate your talent span, for sure it alleviates some of that time to work on more strategic initiatives, but you're also losing the opportunity to tap into this potential of like massive amounts of innovation that comes from these smaller players. And for us, what's the philosophy is having really that visibility, 100% of having this dynamic, real-time, unified, synchronized view of all your suppliers so that you can maximize not just by using spend as a driver, but by really understanding all of the levers that you can pull into your supply chain to drive better outcomes based on the priorities of your organization. And those can be really broad. It could be a savings it actually could be the opposite. It could be consolidation, or it could be a mandate for diversity. And sustainability is the same thing, right? If you can have visibility into all the suppliers that are meeting, the ESG score, if you have a baseline to what that looks like, then you can work towards having, a much bigger impact. And I do think that in procurement, like we're getting into a generation of strategic sourcing employees who are looking for organizations that do care about diversity and inclusion within the organization and the supply chain, that do care about where they're consuming from and the suppliers that are involved in that process. And they want to make a difference. And they want to have access to information that makes them smarter at their job every day. They don't want to make decisions based on hunch or instincts. They want to have the data so that they can have an intelligent, educated, validated story that they can engage the business towards, helping them meet their goals. And, for a long, long time in procurement, we haven't worked with good data. It just hasn't been available. It hasn't been easy to access a synchronized view of your suppliers just because it's been all done through a mix of services and system integrators and portal base and participation from suppliers. And the key to that is to have, no dependency on supplier participation. But to your point earlier, if they do come, they can augment the completeness of the information, but it's a type of computing, the type of technologies that allows us to crawl and aggregate across hundreds of millions of different data sources in a way that we can provide the enterprise that really quick, instant visibility into their supply base and work towards a more complete and a more accurate and a more insightful way to look at their supply chain.
There's so much there to respond to. I love what you guys are doing, and I love the spotlight that has been shown on just the entire concept and the entire industry. Like procurement as a whole has been magnifying glass is now being placed on a lot of procurement teams. And finally, the C-suite is taking notice. And this is the time that companies like Tealbook can help a lot of these organizations really step up in procurement and show their worth and show their value. And I remember one of our earlier conversations, you had mentioned, Tealbook, the first thing that you said was empowered sourcing. And that message rings so true for not only Una's brand, that's what we're about, is empowering procurement, but so many other procurement professionals and other brands. And a lot of people on this podcast have talked about that exact phrase, empowering sourcing, empowering procurement, which is why we want to talk about the sourcing hero. The point of this podcast is to do exactly that, is to empower procurement. So tell me, what do you think the sourcing hero is? How would you define that?
I think sourcing is one piece. It's a very important piece, especially for your audience, because having data impacts a lot of different components of what procurement is, right? Sourcing is an important one because you're engaging directly with the business and you're engaging directly with suppliers. And, in the past, like I remember a story a long time ago that someone said that, someone in marketing, I think it was, went to him and said, okay, I need to find suppliers that can do X. And he pretended like he knew what it was. And then he went back to his team. He said, okay, team, like game plan, like let's find suppliers that can meet this business need. And like 2 weeks later, the stakeholder walked in the hallway and he ducked because he didn't have the answer. And he was so embarrassed that he didn't have yet because he knew this guy was going to ask him, like, what's an update on the process? And I thought, like, how paralyzing that you're not able to have the information in your hands to be able to have a conversation at that moment with your stakeholders to be able to influence them or deliver value right away. Like you have to go away and take on a process to be able to gather the information using several different tools and solutions to come back with a business case, and you lose such a important opportunity to create value. And so my goal was always, why is this happening? Why is there so much friction? And why can't category managers or sourcing managers just have their finger on the pulse and have all the information without spending 20 years in a category? Like you should be a generalist, you should be an advisor, and you should be a valued partner at the table in those conversations so that your role is to have this lens into the world and be able to bring your perspective and help them drive to a better, faster process so that they can get their job done, right? And to get to the better outcome. And that's always how I approached Tealbook, was how do we give that information in the hands of the category manager? And then when you start peeling off, you realize that, well, they don't have the information. The employees don't have the information because the organization doesn't have the data. Right? The data is synchronized. There's data everywhere, but there's no solution today that synchronizes all of this information and delivers it in a way that's relevant and useful to whoever needs to consume it through software or through the platform directly. And one of my favorite story of one of our clients was the category manager knew that there was a contract for a piping supplier that was coming up. And they, in a conversation, they said, hey, we would like to see if we could go out to bid just to make sure that we challenge who we already have under contract before it gets renewed. And he got instant pushback, right? And when I say this story, everybody smiles because they've been through that before, where the business stakeholder said, no, we're not going to go to bid. There's only one supplier that can do this type of piping. No one else can do it. And he took his Tealbook from his phone and was able to type in the name of the supplier and then did a search by relevance, which our machine learning will look at 300 different dimensions of what makes a company similar not to one another. Then was able to filter down by the type of piping and then the geography. This was a pharma company, and they were able to search by relevance and found 6 suppliers that could potentially do the same type of piping that was relevant to the same industry. And so in that, like literally by doing this in front of the business said, like, listen, I came up with, there's 6 suppliers here in Tealbook that look like they could be relevant. Do you mind if we invite them to bid just to make sure that we're getting the most value? And anyway, would be a good opportunity to negotiate, as this contract is coming up. And they were able to save $25 million in that one single sourcing event.
Wow, that's unreal.
If you think of traditionally, you would have lost that opportunity because you would have to go back to your desk and do some research and buy some market intelligence and then come back, and probably the PO would already been issued and it would have been too late. But just in one conversation, because you had information that you're able to have a more value add discussion with the business with information, you're able to influence a $25 million savings. And that's one single sourcing event.
So that guy was absolutely seen as a sourcing hero, I'm sure, in that moment.
And not just because he saved $25 million. Like for the CPO, this is like unbelievable, but for the business too, right? Like that budget can be now used in different ways. And for the business, well, they didn't have really ways to push back because that was all done within a week's time, right? So it's the speed, it's the information, it's the ability to be agile. And the way that I'm seeing and I'm hearing a lot of procurement teams right now struggling because they're not working in the office, right? A lot of people are still working from home. And so you don't have that opportunity to influence at the water cooler or walk by someone's desk or be in a meeting room with them because you happen to be invited. Like you really need to be able to engage the business differently. And if you don't have information, if you don't have data on the categories and the opportunities that they're low-hanging fruits or really strategic initiative, like how are you going to be able to engage them? And I think giving that insight and be able to build a strategy, even if it's a micro strategy between a category manager in the business, or it's a bigger strategy with the chief procurement officers looking to accomplish certain drivers or be able to start building strategy that will start driving compliance to certain behaviors, like you need to have information. And so far, my favorite question to ask when I present at conferences is typically chief procurement officers of the largest companies in the world. And I usually start by saying, raise your hand if you have some confidence in the quality and the completeness of your supplier data today. Some confidence. And I'm not talking transaction, debatably not even spend, because spend has been the construct to date, and spend is important, but it's a fraction of the information that you need. And anytime I ask this question, everybody laughs. Like everybody smiles and they look behind and nobody raised their hands. And then I ask again, like, okay, raise your hand if you believe that having good quality and complete supplier information is absolutely critical to your digital transformation. And you get 100% of people raising their hands. And then I usually ask, like, who here is invested in a cloud-based source to pay or procure to pay in the last 2 years? And typically, because of the size of the organization, the vast majority have invested in those systems. It's not because those systems don't work, but those systems are software and they're portal-based. So they depend on SIs and services to clean and enhance and distribute the data, on services to maintain the quality of the data, which is really hard and it's a snapshot in time, and supplier participation to a portal. And there's so many portals, right, that suppliers do not participate. The vast majority don't. So you end up not having great data and having to go back to services, and your data never gets good. And now you multiply that by all the systems that you have, multiple ERPs. You may have Jagger and Coupa or Ivalua and something else, right? And you have additional sourcing tools and contract management system. And suddenly you're introducing portals for diversity, portals for sustainability, portals for third-party risk management solution. And it's all disaggregated, disparate, and not synchronized. And if you were to attempt to synchronize this data, the investment in system integration would be so massive, and you would never really get there. And so, the opportunity to buy something today that's off the shelf, that can plug into your vendor master, can turn the light on and show you things that you can see before, or validate things that you may have known, but you just didn't have the data to be able to articulate it or be able to support the budget or the ROI or the strategy, and then be able to distribute the same record across your system and allowing people in the organization to have access to a single source of truth. It's so beyond powerful in terms of opportunities that it can unlock. And, the vision I had probably a little too early before the world kind of changed and started adopting cloud solutions to when I launched Tealbook, that's when cloud technology was now finally mainstream. And you couldn't do that kind of computing without having cloud-based technology, especially with the level of integration that's needed and how simple the integration can be. And then the machine learning component of it, that's only just a few years old, right? That you can use information at that scale and make it more complete, more accurate, and using machines to do it. Anyway, as you can probably hear, I'm incredibly passionate because I think
I can hear that. Absolutely. I love it. And so what I'm hearing from you seems like over and over is that a sourcing hero is using data, it's using information to bring value to their organization and their own stakeholders.
Exactly.
Right. And according to the story that you told us a few minutes ago, he had that in the palm of his hand. And he knew how to use a few filters and was able to make a very informed statement and change the trajectory of that sourcing solution. So it's pretty incredible. And I was going to say, take a few minutes to tell us about the value props of Tealbook, but you have gone above and beyond and have already explained exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it and who it helps. I'm wondering though, because it sounds like through your words and through your actions with Tealbook that you are a leader, especially for women, for procurement, for people in tech. What advice would you give to up and coming, procurement professionals specifically, but just someone up and coming right now? What's your advice? Not necessarily to do what you did, but since this industry is evolving quickly, what advice would you give them?
there's still, unfortunately, a lot of antiquated, sort of old school way of thinking about the playbook and procurement. And so if you are energetic and you want to look for, like, I think asking the right questions about the culture and the vision of procurement for the organization is incredibly important. Are they at a stage where they're close or in the middle of a digital transformation? What's working? What's not working? How are they thinking about data? Like, ask the question, like, what's their data strategy? And if they don't have an answer, and most of them don't, just so you know, but then it will also give you the tools to say, the importance of data, but then asking them their roadmap and what they're hoping to achieve with procurement, like what are the top 3 priorities even. So I think it's just ask the right questions, know that you're joining a team that's more progressive. It will give you the opportunity to be a lot more strategic in your role and not get into a tactical position. I think the procurement team of the future will look at ways to scale, like what impact can they have on the entire organization with a smaller team, but a really mighty and strategic team to build that infrastructure and create that sense of enablement so that, while you're having that transparency and you're having the opportunity to impact and have visibility into what's happening, that you're allowing people in the organization to move faster and to respond to the demands of the market faster. And if you're able to do that, you're going to be recognized by the CEO and the CFO and your leadership team. And so that's what I would, if I were a younger sourcing professional, that's certainly what I would be doing, is seeing who's in a digital transformation, understanding what they're after and understanding how my role is going to play, and just always think of what can I do that ties back to what the organization is trying to accomplish.
That's great advice, and certainly something that's top of mind. I see digital transformation, that term, several times a day, but it really is such a serious consideration starting out in procurement, supply chain, sourcing, whatever avenue you go through, but really asking those hard questions and being ready for that answer. It may not be what you want to hear.
But then don't take that job. There's so many exciting companies that are doing things differently. I think it's important. You're going to be there for a few years, and the logos, right? The companies you work for. And that's why it's so important at Tealbook that we have this, like, you have to be proud to be working at Tealbook, because we want you to have that logo for the rest of your career on your LinkedIn account. And people are like, hey, that person worked at Google for 2 or 4 years. It means something. And so I think when you're thinking about your procurement organization as a chief procurement officer, is how can you instill that sense of pride in your team? Because what you're doing today that will energize your people, it will just keep on giving back, because those people are going to go to different organizations and they're going to be able to bring that learning and that energy to other companies to set up, hopefully go on to bigger careers and be able to set up their own procurement function at some point with a different view of what procurement should be and should look like and the impact it can have on the organization. There's one thing I can say is that we've been for a very long time thinking technology first, data last. Again, it comes back to just the antiquated way that we could solve for data, but that's changed. And if you can do data first, technology on top of it, you can really build something that's interchangeable, flexible, best in class. And if you think about the people in the company that are engaging in those solutions, like, you want to give them something that they enjoy and that they bigger impact in their own career. So a few words of wisdom.
I'm sure people will be taking a couple notes through that for sure. So I'm curious, what's next for Tealbook in 2021? Where are you guys going?
Oh, it's so exciting. So depending on when this airs, we are raising more money that will allow us to continue accelerating the investment in our data. So we're all after self-enriching of attributes on suppliers. So we're looking for all kinds of ways to provide a more complete and a better, more accurate view of the suppliers, and building our own data set that allows our clients to start thinking about how they benchmark, how they're doing compared to other companies in their industry, and give them the insight and the tools to be able to make a difference. So that's very important. We're looking, I don't know if you saw, but Eloise Epstein from Kearney published a spider graph about a month ago. And it's a spider graph that she publishes every year with all the different categories and puts logo on those categories. And every year she had a circle in the middle that talked about a data lake and a AI hub. And for the first time, she put a logo on that center, and it happens to be Tealbook. So, being recognized by the thought leaders and the analysts in our space to be the data foundation that powers your e-procurement technology stack, that powers your procurement organization is incredibly validating for us. And so we're going to continue cementing that position. We are hiring quite fast. We'll have over 50 positions coming up in all the different functions. So definitely looking for talent and just, continuing to make a difference. I think finding opportunities that we can continue to help our customers in the community is really critical.
Well, I have no doubt that you're going to be able to find plenty of people to work with Tealbook and your initiatives with supplier diversity, your core values, what you care about, what you stand for, I think speaks for itself. And honestly, I'm a big fan. I think what you guys are doing is so impactful, so needed. And I just hope that, through more investment, that more people can see what you guys are doing. And we're happy to help in any way we can, for sure. And I wish you and Tealbook much continued success through 2021.
Thank you, Catherine. I really appreciate that. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. And listeners, I hope you took a few of these nuggets from Stephany today. I know I did. And until next time, Stephany, because I hope there is a next time, perhaps next year we can check in again. I wish you the best.
Thank you again.